Hey everybody, welcome back to the show. As you know, storms are all over the place, and here in Austin, the roads are pretty unsafe where we are. So Jaden might be able to make it over here at some point, producer Jaden, but as of now, I don't have access to the studio, so I am with all of you in the car to talk about this. There's just too much to talk about to wait to see if we can get the whole operation up and running in these conditions. Let's start with, of course, another ICE killing, what I perceive to be murder, a completely unjust killing of Alex Preddy, an ICU nurse. From all accounts, just not that this makes a difference as to whether or not it was justified, but just a great person working at a VA hospital, and was at a protest filming. He was filming, which you're allowed to do. Then a woman gets shoved. He steps over to assist her. ICE sprays something in his face and her face, and then grabs him. And he had a lawful concealed carry permit, so he had a gun on his waistband somewhere and didn't grab it. From all the videos we have, we'll go through that in a second here, and was just manhandled to the ground. And then, with no threat to the officers, the gun had already been taken off of him that he had legally, that MAGA told us was a great thing to do, having a gun on your person legally, and he got shot to death. Got shot over and over and over for really no reason. The whole situation, even the initial approaching of him and grabbing him, made no sense. And then definitely to kill him when he posed no threat to them is nauseating. And so I want to start here, and as always, whenever I try to do these types of on-the-go segments, apologies for any audio or video differences from a normal studio, but I want to start with Maria Bartiromo, then we'll get to the video itself, obviously really disturbing to watch, and go frame by frame to debunk some of what the Trump administration is saying. But Maria Bartiromo, who's normally a total pro-Trump propagandist, even she is going, wait, this doesn't sound right. I don't think that the Trump administration is necessarily telling the truth. Maria Bartiromo, like, she's the biggest Trump cheerleader, and she's questioning it. And I think that tells you a lot, despite the fact that she has helped enable us to get here. But we'll start with those clips. I think that's really notable, and the questions she's asking after the Trump administration came out, just like with Renee Good, and started lying immediately and acted like he stormed up to the officers holding a gun. Nope. Wasn't brandishing the weapon, threatening them, was filming with his phone. And then they decided to grab him, manhandle him, and then use the fact that he had on his person a lawfully obtained and lawful carrying, from all we can tell, firearm, which again was something that the right-wingers were telling us was amazing and kept everyone safer if more people would have that. So really disturbing stuff. Here's the first clip. Maria Bartiromo asking FBI Director Kash Patel questions about the narrative that the Trump administration has run with, that this was an assassin.
But how was he threatening?
And let me go ahead and do this real quick, okay?
But how was he threatening Border Patrol? You've collected the evidence, you said, right? You have the handgun in your possession?
That's right.
And how was he using that handgun in terms of threatening Border Patrol? What was the threat? He had his camera, right? He was filming it.
That's something that I will let the DHS and the prosecutors, because they are the ones investigating that case. I don't want to stylize that evidence, but I trust the men and women on the ground who are trained professionals to only use it when it's absolutely necessary. And I trust Secretary Noem's leadership and DHS and HSI to do the right thing, as they've always done.
And I'm trying, just so all of you, as I always say, don't get too viscerally stressed, despite this being a really stressful situation. I'm going to try not to scream and yell about this, but one time unjustly killing a U.S. citizen who's protesting, being Renee Good, it still was absurd what they were saying and their justifications. And trust us, ICE personnel know exactly when to use deadly force, only when necessary. Like, if you wanted so badly, which I don't know at this point why you would, to believe the Trump administration or Jonathan Ross in that case, if you wanted to believe that they really were only going to use deadly force when absolutely necessary, you pretty much can't even get there with one murder of a U.S. citizen. But holy smokes, how could you possibly go, I don't know, complicated, but I trust that they would only... No, it's obvious now. Insanely trigger happy. Escalating situations, the officers are, the ICE personnel, only so that whenever something terrible happens in a situation you escalated against a person who was being completely peaceful from all the video that we have, Alex Preddy, for you to turn around and go, oh my gosh, things are just getting too out of control, and they had to handle it the way they knew fit. No, but you made it that out of control. And again, we're going to look at the video in a second, but see, Maria Bartiromo was like, how is he threatening? Then with James Comer, similar stuff.
Another individual is dead at the hands of Border Patrol. Let's be clear. We do not know if there was any pushback from this individual who was armed. We do not have evidence that he was waving a gun, doing anything to threaten Border Patrol. He had his phone and he was shooting, he was viewing and recording the incident. That's what he was doing, recording the incident. Mm-hmm. What is your reaction?
So I do think that tells you a lot, just given who she is. And it's not the only time on Fox News. Another contributor said this.
The question I've asked a number of times today, Ted, is who goes to a protest and brings a gun? I mean...
Okay, quickly. Really? Really? That's what we're saying now? Because they can't justify the actual incident, but who goes to a protest and brings a gun? Now, I'm going to do a whole different segment later about that particular justification, because I remember in not too distant past, all these same people justifying someone doing exactly that, except they actually were swinging around the gun. They actually were holding it out where everyone could see it. And that was great, and that was Second Amendment. This, concealed carry, now that by itself is justification for somebody to be killed.
Was he not asking for some kind of trouble in that situation?
No, I really don't think so, John. Look, I've been on this channel on numerous occasions where we talk about the Second Amendment and the right to carry firearms. And I've known people to go to demonstrations before in the past and to have firearms with them. He didn't do anything with that firearm. That man is dead. And there's a question mark as to whether he should have been killed under these circumstances.
Yeah, not much of a question mark to me that he shouldn't have. So, let me compare for you what Kristi Noem immediately came out and said, the DHS secretary, and then compare that with the actual frame-by-frame video, okay? So here's Kristi Noem, her explanation of the event.
Individual approached U.S. Border Patrol officers with a 9mm semi-automatic handgun. The officers attempted to disarm this individual, but the armed suspect reacted violently. Fearing for his life and for the lives of his fellow officers around him, an agent fired defensive shots. Medics were on the scene immediately and attempted to deliver medical aid to the subject, but he was pronounced dead at the scene. The suspect also had 2 magazines with ammunition in them that held dozens of rounds. He also had no ID. This looks like a situation where an individual arrived at the scene to inflict maximum damage on individuals and to kill law enforcement.
So that's her explanation. Kind of like how she came out and called Renee Good a domestic terrorist. Even Piers Morgan said such disingenuous horseshit. But this was echoed by so many different voices.
About it. Today, there's a report of an ICE officer getting his finger bit off, and then unfortunately, a deranged individual that came in to cause max damage with a loaded pistol with an extra mag that was completely loaded, was shot and killed. How much more does this got to go on before they? All
right, so let's look at it. Let's look ourselves at the frame by frame. The Wall Street Journal has a piece on this that's titled "Videos Contradict U.S. Account of Minneapolis Shooting by Federal Agents." Bystander footage shows Preddy standing in the street where he appears to film with his cell phone while other people approach the agents. You can see that happening here. Other people are approaching. He's waving cars. You see that? He's waving cars, kind of like almost doing traffic control and filming. Totally legal. He's filming. He sees something chaotic happening. He walks closer with his phone. You can see him walking towards. Absolutely no visible firearm. It's clearly a concealed carry on his waist or somewhere. And he's filming. I'm just replaying it so you can see. As the ICE agent encounters somebody else. You can see here the ICE agent shoves a protester. Alex Preddy, who's getting people out of the way. You can see he's sort of pulling that one girl out of the way. Then goes up to help her. That's whenever the ICE agent sprays him and the women with some sort of chemical agent. He reacts, puts his hand up. This is not reaching for something, puts his hand up. Still just holding his phone, filming. We go to the next thing, they grab him. They shove him to the ground. They're wrestling him to the ground. Bystander footage shows one agent drawing his firearm and pointing it at Preddy. So ready to do something. Around the same time, a different video verified by the Journal shows Preddy pinned down to the ground and agents appeared to discover a firearm on him. So he clearly has not grabbed it. That was just there, something he's legally carrying, concealed carry. He's filming. He sees someone get shoved. He walks towards them as he's still filming. He gets sprayed with chemical agent. He doesn't lunge at the officer. He doesn't approach in any aggressive way. He just puts one of his hands up. They grab him. They wrestle him to the ground. He's on the ground. They discover that on his body, he has a firearm. It gets removed from his body. And then shots are fired. So he's not even holding the weapon. And he wasn't reaching for it, from what we can tell. As shots are fired, bystander footage shows another officer raising his firearm. A preliminary analysis of the video's audio suggests a total of 10 shots were fired from a single semi-automatic firearm. About a minute after the shooting, bystander footage shows officers shouting, "Where's the gun?" And one of the other agents had it. So, from the timeline of the video, you have a peaceful protester who's legally, as MAGA has passionately defended in any other case, has concealed, holstered, presumably, a gun that he's not reaching for, that's under his jacket, is closed, you can't see it. He's filming. He goes to help someone. The officer then aggressively approaches him. For what reason? I don't know. He didn't do anything threatening. Just standing in a street in public while ICE is around doesn't mean they can do whatever they want to you. Then he gets brought to the ground. One of the agents discovers the weapon on him that he's not grabbing, takes it off of him, he gets shot. No threat to the officers. Here's Jake Tapper with a video about this.
I want to show you a video that CNN just obtained of the shooting, and I'm going to overlay on the video of the shooting of Alex Preddy the description of the shooting that we all heard from the Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security, Kristi Noem. And I want you to see if her description matches what you see in the video. The first image you're going to see is Alex Preddy, this 37-year-old ICU nurse from the Minneapolis VA who was shot and killed today by federal agents. The first image you're going to see is him standing in the middle of the street of Minneapolis, holding his cell phone, filming these federal agents.
An individual approached U.S. Border Patrol officers with a 9mm semi-automatic handgun.
So it's a lie. That makes it sound like he walked up with a gun in his hand, which would be very different. That's not it. She's lying.
The officers attempted to disarm this individual, but the armed suspect reacted violently. Fearing for his life and for the lives of his fellow officers around him,
he puts his back to them and just leans over the woman.
Agent fired defensive shots. Medics were on the scene immediately and attempted to deliver medical aid to the subject, but he was pronounced dead at the scene. The suspect also had 2 magazines with ammunition in them that held dozens of rounds. He also had no ID. This looks like a situation where an individual arrived at this scene to inflict maximum damage on individuals and to...
So you can see him, right there you can see it, the gun being taken off of him from what looks like his back waistband. It's off of him, then you hear the shots fired.
Arrived at this scene to inflict maximum damage on individuals and to kill law enforcement.
completely unarmed at the point of being shot. Not grabbing for the weapon. They just find it on him, which he was allowed to have, on what appears to be the back of his waistband. Washington Post, federal agents in Minneapolis wrestled Alex Preddy to the ground, secured the handgun he was carrying moments before shooting him multiple times. I mean, here's a Iraq war veteran saying, even at war, I wouldn't have handled it like this.
From what I saw in the video, there was no rules of engagement that I've ever had that would have justified shooting somebody in that situation. And I'm an Iraq veteran. Like, I wouldn't have shot somebody at war with the situation that happened. And he shot an American citizen that he did not have the authority to be giving those orders to. Should scare the shit out of everyone that we have people in the executive branch talking about there being such a thing as absolute immunity.
Yeah, it's so discouraging. It is really, really discouraging. As I said, after Renee Good was killed, is you have the event itself being heartbreaking and terrible, and you wanting accountability and you wishing that it didn't happen. And then you have the extra disturbing characteristic of the Trump administration coming out and just lying through their teeth. They have access, if not to more, at least to the video that we have access to. So they know when they're saying he walked up with a gun threatening the officers, then responded violently. You can see he doesn't reach for any gun. He just happens to have it on him legally, from all that we know. Then turns around, just sort of shielding the woman, went over to help filming. The only thing in his hands, phone. And then all that plays out. They know they're lying. And I don't know how to get my head around that. I mean, Scott Bessent was on TV trying to defend this.
Did bring a 9mm semi-automatic weapon with 2 cartridges to what was supposed to be a peaceful protest. I think that there are a lot of paid agitators who are ginning things up, and the governor has not done a good job at tamping this down.
Yeah, I mean, as you know, he was an ICU nurse, worked for the Veterans Administration, and there's no evidence that he brandished the gun whatsoever. In fact, it appears
but he was
disarmed before
he brought a gun. Have you ever gone to a protest, Jonathan?
I mean, we do have a Second Amendment in this country that...
Jonathan, have you ever gone to...
I'm going to spoil a little bit of what we're talking about in a different segment. They all cheered on Kyle Rittenhouse, who was holding a much larger gun in his hands, visibly, and showed up to a protest, and they said that wasn't. And Kyle Rittenhouse did nothing wrong in that case. But then someone who wasn't even brandishing the gun, wasn't even holding with his hands the gun, that by itself is justification to shoot them dead. Which means, just so you know, any Republicans, right-wingers, I know a bunch personally here in Texas who legally carry a gun on their person. They're saying if a law enforcement person interacts with you and notices that you have that on you, even if you don't grab it, they can just kill you. They can kill you. That's what they're saying. Here's the Deputy Attorney General.
Mr. Blanche, I just want to stay on this, though. Local officials do say Alex Preddy was a lawful gun owner with a permit to carry. The video seems to show at one moment an officer removing a gun in the seconds before Mr. Preddy was shot. Was he disarmed before those shots were fired?
I do not know, and nobody else knows either. That's why we're doing an investigation.
And I play that for you because once again, you have this ridiculous double standard of we aren't allowed to be outraged because an investigation hasn't concluded. But Kristi Noem and whoever else at the White House or the Trump administration is allowed to jump to conclusions and come up with any narrative they'd like to justify the shooting. So they can get ahead of it and say it's perfectly justified before an investigation, but we can't. Friend of the show, Josiah, said, hadn't seen the footage this magnified before. There's another angle you can see. I'm kind of scrubbing through, showing the same series of events. And Josiah continues saying, looks like Preddy's gun was holstered in a small of back waistband holster when disarmed. It wasn't in his hand or anywhere near it, and he wasn't reaching for it. Pretty effing damning, as if the previous footage wasn't bad enough. That appears to be exactly the case. And then Bovino was on TV. I guess we can play one of these videos. It's kind of getting insane listening to this.
Well, you said yesterday that this looks like a situation where the individual wanted to do maximum damage and massacre law enforcement. What evidence do you have that he wanted to massacre law enforcement? Because all the videos that we have, and I do want to, we just have the still shot up now, but I do, control room, want to play one of the other videos. Let's play video number 1 again. It doesn't look anything like he's trying to massacre law enforcement. In fact, he was filming, and then it looked like he was trying to help another individual there who was pushed down by law enforcement, and then they went after him.
In fact, I believe that the fantastic training that our law enforcement partners have, the fact that they're highly trained, prevented any specific shootings of law enforcement. So good job for our law enforcement in taking him down before he was able to do that.
It's sickening. By the way, I saw Jake Tapper post this, replying to Aaron Blake. In response to DHS's credibility in situations like this, I often think back to this paragraph on Bovino. It's from a judge's ruling in November, and one of the quotes is, Bovino admitted in his deposition that he lied multiple times. He's a liar, and he knows that he's a liar, and he's choosing to lie, and he's giving credit to the ICE agents for acting the way that they did. And again, as you watch that video more times, the only reason I'm speaking in some vague terms, I don't want to misstate anything, given how recently this happened, but as you examine the video more and more, it does seem, as Josiah said, there was a back of the waistband, either holster or it was stuck in the back of his waistband, and he's leaning forward with his hands in front of him. At no point did he even indicate he was interested in reaching back around, if that's where it indeed was, which it looks like it is from this video. And then it's taken off of him, and then he gets shot to death. So that's the kind of breakdown of the event itself. We have a lot of other aspects to this we'll get into. And I think I just saw producer Jaden pull up, so maybe he weathered the storm and we'll be able to do the rest of the show in the studio.